Hi guys, welcome to this video. I am Prashant, I am the founder of Word Pandit, and I am bringing this series of videos to you wherein I explain to you previous year CAT questions. Here we've got a CAT 2018 paragraph summary question and we are going to go through the video solution for this. Before we do that, I would request you to pause this video and solve this question. I hope you've done that now. Let's get started with the video solution for this particular question. In paragraph summary questions, you've got to identify the option which best captures the author's position. Effectively, you've got to provide the summary or the gist of the paragraph. You've got to tell us through one line or one answer option the option that best reflects the main idea of the passage here. So in order to identify the answer, you should always try to understand the paragraph and identify a main idea of your own and then correlate it with the answer options. Now, what is the paragraph all about? The paragraph tells us the early optimism about sports deterrent effects. So deterrent is basically sport acting as a preventive, sports preventing something from happening. Sports deterrent effects on delinquency. Delinquency refers to nothing else but violent acts conducted by minors, right? So generally antisocial or violent acts which have been conducted by minors. So basically crimes committed by minors, crimes committed by children. So they're saying the early optimism about sports deterrent effects on delinquency was premature, and researchers failed to find any consistent relationship between sports participation and deviance. Now, what he's basically saying is that early researchers, right, they were very optimistic about something. They were optimistic about what? They were optimistic about the fact that if you can put kids in sports, they were in all likelihood they will not turn to crime, right? So sport had a deterrent effect on delinquency. So you're saying this early optimism that was there that researchers had, this was premature. So that means they should not have been optimistic. Why would they not be optimistic? Because obviously there must be some issues with those studies. As the initial studies were based upon cross-sectional data and the effects captured were short-term, it was problematic to test and verify the temporal sequencing of events. So temporal sequencing is nothing else but time-wise sequencing of events suggested by the deterrence theory. So in the long term, as far as time-wise sequences go, since the studies were only short-term, they really could not see whether this was really working or not. The correlation between sport and delinquency could not be disentangled from class and cultural variables known. So the class of the individual, so from which class of society did the individual come from, and different cultural variables, right? They also had an impact and they could not really figure out, right? Look at it this way. There are 3 or 4 different factors. So class is A. Cultural variables B, sport is C. All of these are related to delinquent behavior. Now you've tried to figure out that what is it that is leading to delinquent behavior or not. And since there is, you're not really able to come up with a time-wise sequencing, you're not really able to delineate all 3, it gets difficult to see what is impacting what, right? It might be that class of the individual is actually leading to the fact that the person does not play sports, which happens in society, right? Which in further leads to the child being delinquent. So you might be assuming that since the child is not playing sports, he's delinquent. It might actually be caused by class, right? Or it could be any way around. Any one of these factors could be leading to the other. Choosing individuals to play sports in the first place was problematic, which became more acute in the subsequent decades as researchers began to document how closely sports participation was linked to social class indicators. Exactly what I explained a minute back. So it is really, really difficult, right? Because all these factors are related to each other to really figure out what is causing what. So the initial optimism, right, it has faded now, and now there are some doubts, and these doubts are very, very serious, right? So that's the current status that we have. Option number A, sports participation is linked to cultural variables, class and cultural variables as education, income, social capital. Problem with this answer option, it completely skips out the topic of delinquency, right? Hence ruled out, cannot be the summary of the paragraph, misses the most important point in the passage. Option number D, there is a direct relationship between sports participation and delinquency, but it needs more empirical evidence. Actually, the author has stated otherwise, that the relationship is very, very hazy, right? So you cannot say there is a direct relationship, hence ruled out. Leaves us with options B and 2 and 3. Contradicting previous optimism, later researchers have proved that there is no consistent relationship between sports participation and deviance. He's saying that contradicting the previous optimism, later researchers have proved that there is no consistent relationship between sports participation and deviance. The problem with this answer option is, have they proved this, right? doubts have been raised, some very serious doubts. He says it was problematic to test and verify the temporal sequencing of events suggested by the deterrence theory. The correlation could not be disentangled from class and cultural variables. Have they proved that there is no consistent relationship? They've not proved this. They've only said that we cannot really disentangle the different variables. So basically there are a lot of issues in identifying this, but they've not proved something, right? Another too strong an answer option, hence ruled out. Option number 3, statistical and empirical weaknesses stand in the way of inferring any relationship between sports participation and deviance. So this essentially highlights the issues that the researchers are facing. Statistical and empirical weaknesses basically tell us weaknesses in research, right? So the issues that they have, he directly says choosing individuals to play sports in the first place was problematic. Researchers began to document how sports participation was closely linked to social class indicators. The correlation could not be disentangled from class and cultural variables. So there are a lot of issues in the research as well. These are standing in the way of inferring any relationship between sports participation and deviance, which is exactly that what is being talked about in the passage. Deviance is nothing else. Deviant behavior is effectively referring to delinquent behavior deviating from the norm, right? So deviance and delinquent behavior are synonymous terms in the given paragraph. Hopefully so you're clear with the question now, and you've understood why is option number 3 the correct answer here, and you've understood the reasoning behind it. Thank you very much for watching this video, and as always, happy learning.